Never thought I'd be able to see that in person. Never thought I'd be able to see that in person. I cannot see myself. Alright, guys, give us a few minutes here and we'll get it jumping. What? I am or I'm not? Oh. Alright. Yes, technical help, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, wow. So, okay. I'll give you guys a second here because apparently, I am just, like I said, Trump is just not wanting to work with us today. So, with that being said, we're going to make the best that we can out of this. Oh, that's funny. Alright, well, hi honey. I know she's watching. She's letting me know we're good. Alright, so bear with me guys here. Just like I said, we're trying to get past the government shutdown on this one. Let's see. And I apologize for looking down. It's just that I'm trying to get all things sorted. Not situated, sorted is the word I want to say. So just give a brother a few more moments. Okay, we're just gonna run with it because I think we're good enough to go for this. All right, so today's date, January 19, 2019, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host and most, Will Buchanan, and on How the Frack We Got Here, we do try to look at the week of news and events and things of that nature, and I'll try to make sense of it all. And trust me, there's a lot to make sense of it all in this one. Just because the simple fact of the matter is just that, well, a lot has actually happened, to be kind of honest. There really is no way around that. So, not to copy Chris Cuomo, but we might as well get after it. So, you probably already noticed we don't have a working government. We haven't had a working government now for what, almost 27 days and counting? So 27 days and counting. And at the same time, now you actually have I can't say President Trump. I try to say President Trump. We now have Agent Orange, who is supposedly going to have an announcement later today regarding the shutdown and I guess his wall, his beautiful wall that he seems to be so obsessed with and things of that nature. I just think the man is a little deranged. At least I think he's deranged. But he's going to actually have an announcement about that later on today. But let's actually get into which I think is kind of funny. Like around this time of year, we do have a State of the Union address. We do, which is going to be kind of funny because had Agent Orange decide to go take the State of the Union address and actually goes up there and says the state of our union is strong, I can see a whole lot of people just going bullshit. I can see a lot of people doing that, honestly. So, but anyway, here's what we have. I mean, the funny part is he wants to do his State of the Union speech so bad, and Pelosi had something that she wanted to say about that.
Sources tell CBS News the president is feeling increased pressure to end the government shutdown, but sources also insist he's not going to change his position about funding for a border wall. Well, yesterday, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says unless the government opens this week, she is rescinding the invitation to the president to deliver his State of the Union address in the House of Representatives. She said you can do it in writing if you want. And this was all scheduled to take place on January 29th in the House chamber. It has been a week since the president last spoke with Democratic leaders, and there's no sign of progress in ending this 27-day shutdown. Paula Reed is at the White House again this morning. Paula, good morning.
Good morning. The president has not responded to Speaker Pelosi, but sources inside the White House tell us that top officials are suggesting to the president that he should view this political maneuvering as a sign of weakness and a suggestion that Democrats fear that he would use this enormous platform to his advantage.
This is a very big deal. It is a special security event.
The State of the Union is not good.
Speaker Pelosi wants to delay the president's annual address to the nation until after the government reopens.
You can make it from the Oval Office.
In a letter to the president yesterday, Pelosi, citing security concerns, argued both the Secret Service and the Department of Homeland Security have not been funded for 26 days now. DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen countered and said her department and the U.S. Secret Service are fully prepared to support and secure the State of the Union. President Trump responded to Pelosi's power move with uncharacteristic silence, but lawmakers made plenty of noise.
Democrats have made a marketing decision to obstruct President Trump at all costs.
I want President Trump to look into these faces.
As Americans increasingly turn to one another.
They can grab some non-perishable goods for the time they need some help.
Eggs for the masses.
Restaurants and food banks are helping people put food on the table.
I mean, who can't pass up mac and cheese?
But federal workers on the brink of making tough financial decisions.
Every day that it lasts, it heightens my anxiety, my level of concern, and I'm definitely feeling the pinch.
Want Washington to get past politics.
The federal workforce should not be held hostage in what could be a continuing debate.
And get back to work.
We need them to get back to work because they're messing us up.
Yesterday, the president signed a bill to ensure that furloughed workers will receive their paychecks after the shutdown ends. But the fact that both sides of the aisle are arguing over an event that won't take place for 2 weeks suggests that everyone knows that this is unlikely to end anytime soon. John?
All right. And the interesting thing about that is where it could just be me, but am I the only guy that looks at Mitch McConnell every time he says, the Democrats are trying to obstruct something? I just feel this overwhelming need to sit there and call him a hypocrite. I mean, the guy who literally could honestly, and I'm just not, and I know it's supposed to be a non-biased opinion, but the reality of it all is Mitch McConnell could easily accept any bill and get the government reopened. He could. It's his, for the time being, it's his job. But it's interesting to where he would sit there and say the other side is obstructing President Trump. And it is interesting because the Democrats have pushed so many bills out, even bills that Republicans themselves, the Democrats put out bills that Republicans approved way beforehand, are now being shot down. Because the thing about it is, Mitch McConnell and President Trump pretty much are on the same page. Trump's not going to sign anything that doesn't have a wall without funding for his wall behind it. Mitch McConnell's going to sit there and say he serves as the president. I hate to break it to you, but it's like watching two people kick the can between each other in the Cans America. But I just thought it was interesting. Mitch McConnell decides to talk about obstruction, and I'm like, dude, you are the living definition of obstruction right now. But aside from that, so there's another story that actually came out this week, and it kind of bugs me because I myself. I don't really consider myself a journalist. I've never had the training. I've never had the education. But I do believe in whatever you report. First and foremost, you should always have sources. You've learned that since high school when you wrote papers. You can't write anything out there unless you have credible, variable sources, and then you will be able to go from there on that. Which brings us to the next story of where I sit there and say that this is why some things should honestly not be trusted.
You said that you have 2 law enforcement sources who tell you that they have seen evidence, texts, emails, a cache of other documents, maybe transcripts with other witnesses in Trump Organization that Donald Trump pressured Michael Cohen to lie. He suborned perjury. Have you seen any of that other corroborating evidence?
No, I've not seen it personally, but the folks that we've talked to, the 2 officials that we've spoken to, are fully 100% read in to that aspect of the special counsel's investigation.
Can you explain in greater detail the types of evidence that they say they have? What led them to ask Michael Cohen about this?
Sure. They have been working the sort of Trump Moscow Tower portion of this investigation. Our sources have before Mueller. And so they had access to a number of different documents, FBI 302 reports, which are interview reports. And so that stuff was sort of compiled as they began to look at who the players were speaking with, how those negotiations went, who all from the Trump organization and outside the organization were involved in getting that tower set up. They began to compile this evidence before Michael Cohen decided to cooperate and to speak with the special counsel. And then it's our understanding that they presented this to him or began asking questions based off of it. Then he acknowledged in his interview, yes, indeed, I was directed by the president. We don't know at this point, and our sources haven't told us how exactly that directive was handed down. Was it in person, on the telephone? We're not clear, but it is our understanding that this is rock solid information developed over the course of a long period of time, and then Michael was used to sort of, I guess, confirm it.
Do your sources have any sense of why President Trump would want Michael Cohen to lie about this?
No, it's a really good question. We've been trying to get Mr. Cohen or his spokesperson on the phone for the last 72 hours, and they have declined to talk to us, saying that they are not answering questions because they don't want to interfere with the special counsel's inquiry. I don't want to speculate on any reasons why the president would tell him to sort of move that date or come up with a different date than was actually true.
Has the White House or the president's private lawyers, have they responded or denied directly to the facts put out in this story?
Not in the record, no, sir. We gave them every opportunity last night. Shortly before I published, I was telling individuals, if you guys would like to deny it, we will give you ample space to do so, and they would not do that on the record.
So the thing about this is, and that bugs, now that's one side. Now, before I start the second part, that's one side. So, of course, BuzzFeed came out earlier this week and said that, yes, they have explosive news that Michael Cohen, his former fixer, has lied to, was directed to lie to Congress on behalf of Baby Orange. Slight problem with that. I mean, again, I'm not trying to knock any news organization, but BuzzFeed breaking this news first before anything else, I'm not saying they're not wrong, but to make an accusation such as that and say, yes, Mueller's team has discovered that Michael Cohen had lied on the direction of Trump, and therefore, if that is true, keep in mind, Mueller's investigation is still going on. So all this right now, that's why I sit there and say, from an investigative journalism standpoint, if you're going to make an accusation like that, you better be sitting on the holy grail of evidence, personally. Because they keep on saying, well, we've talked to sources about this, that, and the other. And again, this is the part where it's going to bug me, because as soon as that story came out, this comes out.
At the top of this program with one of two BuzzFeed reporters behind a report that, if true, meant that federal investigators had evidence that the President of the United States committed a serious crime and potentially an impeachable offense. CNN had not independently confirmed the story, nor had any other news organization. And just a few moments ago, we learned that BuzzFeed was going to pull their reporter from the program because Robert Mueller's office was about to weigh in. Well, that office has weighed in, and it is something in itself. Before getting into exactly what Mueller's office has now said, and they rarely ever say anything on the record, here's the essence of what the BuzzFeed report was. The headline read, President Trump directed his attorney, Michael Cohen, to lie to Congress about the Moscow Tower project. Earlier today, neither the president nor the White House categorically denied the substance of it. By this afternoon, though, that line had changed. Rudy Giuliani, the president's TV lawyer, calling the report categorically false. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders echoed that line.
Did the president direct Michael Cohen to lie to Congress?
Look, that's absolutely ridiculous. I think that the president's outside counsel addressed this best and said in a statement earlier today that's categorically false.
Well, now, in a very rare move, the special counsel's office has weighed in. CNN's Sarah Murray joins us now with that and all the other late developments. So what did the special counsel's office say? And this just happened.
It did just happen, Anderson. And as you pointed out, it's remarkable that they issued a statement like this. But here's what it says from Peter Carr, the spokesman for the special counsel. BuzzFeed's description of specific statements to the special counsel's office and characterization of documents and testimony obtained by this office regarding Michael Cohen's congressional testimony are not accurate. And remember, Anderson, this story, it's sourced to, federal law enforcement officials, but it also said that there were all of these documents, that there were interviews, that there were witnesses And that is really what backed up this notion that the president had tried to get Michael Cohen to testify to something that just wasn't true in front of Congress. And now the special counsel is pretty unequivocally saying, you know, we have documents and witness statements, but they don't back up what BuzzFeed is saying in the story.
BuzzFeed, by the way, just responded. I'm quoting from them. We are continuing to report and determine what the special counsel is disputing. We remain confident in the accuracy of our report, they say.
You would say that. And honestly, they honestly would say that. Now, this is the part where I say gets muddy. Like I said, nothing wrong with investigative reporting, but like I said, I know me with no experience in it, I have to say honestly, if you are not sitting on the holy grail of evidence to back up what you're saying, especially in a high profile case, because don't believe that Baby Orange won't stare from his Twitter and sit there and go, I told you it was all fake news. It's all fake news. It's a big witch hunt. They want me out of office, America. They want me out of office, America. He's going to be shouting from the rooftops, and BuzzFeed just gave him ammo. Now, whether or not BuzzFeed is exactly right, the problem is this is an ongoing investigation. I like many other people, want Mueller to finish, but I also understand things that have this high profile of a case will ultimately take time. Think about this for a second. Nixon and Watergate. Excuse me. Nixon and Watergate. Watergate took well over 3 years to get investigated. And even at the end of it all, we still didn't get Nixon. Nixon just resigned. Although the investigation did prove that, yeah, he had something to do with it. But he still resigned. But keep in mind, that took almost nearly 3 years. Plus 3 years and some change, actually. So again, with BuzzFeed coming out and every other news, so-called news organization coming out, this is the problem why most Americans do have with media. It's just that you have these people going out, you have these organizations going out there, and I'm not saying making claims, but I am saying the simple fact of the matter is, you just simply cannot sit there and say something about an ongoing investigation without having evidence or permission or cooperation from said company who's investigating. It would be different if BuzzFeed had sat there and said, well, we got this directly from Mueller's special counsel and this is what they said. If they had sat there and said that and had the evidence to back it up, nobody would question it. But the simple fact of the matter is, you did your own investigating. That's more of a headline attention than an actual truth to me. Now, I could be wrong. Again, this is all allegation. Because BuzzFeed's not backing down. They're pretty much saying, we are confident in the accuracy of our report. Well, I hope you are, because if it turns out that he's not, then the only person that's going to have egg on their face is you. But speaking of special counsel, William Barr, for all those who may not know who William Barr is the Trump pick for the new AG after Rothstein. And it's kind of funny. He actually had some interesting things to say about his confirmation and things that he'll do, which is okay at some points, but some points still makes me concerned.
I believe it is vitally important that the special counsel be allowed to complete his investigation. I have known Bob Mueller for 30 years. We worked closely together throughout my previous tenure at the Department of Justice. We've been friends since, and I have the utmost respect for Bob and his distinguished record of public service. And when he was named special counsel, I said his selection was good news, and that knowing him, I had confidence he would handle the matter properly, and I still have that confidence today. Given his public actions to date, I expect that the special counsel is well along in his investigation. At the same time, the president has been steadfast that he was not involved in any collusion with Russian attempts to interfere in the election. I believe it is in the best interest of everyone, the president, Congress, and the American people, that this matter be resolved by allowing the special counsel to complete his work. The country needs a credible resolution to these issues. And if confirmed, I will not permit partisan politics, personal interests, or any other improper consideration to interfere with this or any other investigation. I will follow the special counsel regulations scrupulously and in good faith, and on my watch, Bob will be allowed to finish his work. Second, I also believe it is very important that the public and Congress be informed of the results of the special counsel's work. My goal will be to provide as much transparency as I can consistent with the law. I can assure you that where judgments are to be made, I will make those judgments based solely on the law, and I will not let personal, political, or other improper interests influence my decision. Third, I would like to briefly address the memorandum that I wrote last June. I wrote the memo as a former Attorney General who has often weighed in on legal issues of public importance, and I distributed it broadly so that other lawyers would have the benefit of my views. My memo was narrow, explaining my thinking on a specific obstruction of justice theory under a single statute that I thought, based on media reports, the special counsel might be considering. The memo did not address or in any other way question the special counsel's core investigation into Russian efforts to interfere in the election, nor did it address other potential obstruction of justice theories or argue that some have wrongly suggested that a president can never obstruct justice. I wrote it myself on my own initiative without any assistance and based solely on public information.
Well, that itself is interesting, and I'll tell you why. Like I said, William Barr basically coming forward and sitting there saying, well, yeah, Mueller's going to be allowed to finish his investigation. He's going to be not hindered, which is good. I can't knock that. It's good to know that he's not going to get in Mueller's way about investigating the Russian interference, I should say. We can't say the other way. We can't say, we can say collusion all we want because that's what Trump stands on. Not forgetting the fact that the Mueller investigation is supposed to see whether or not Russia interfered with our election and the scope of that. Now, if it leads to where, like I said, the Trump administration being involved, which, if you have never been watching anything on the news lately, as far as the ones that are doing the proper journalism, like Maddow and all them, and Rachel Maddow and others, have already found multiple instances of possible collusion and also obstruction of justice. But that's another story. But it's interesting where he sits there and says, well, the findings of Mueller's report should be available to the public. Well, I hope they are, because when you say findings, I'm like, you didn't say, he keeps on saying, well, transparency is needed. Okay, well, transparency is needed. Then I would sit there and say the full report will be available to the public, unredacted, because, you're basically, you are spending tax dollars to investigate this. We might as well find out whether or not he really did do it. But again, we'll see where he comes from as far as that goes, and honestly going from there. But this other story I want to show, and it's kind of interesting. I always do love the fact of when other people get really taking interest into politics, because you should. You should always be aware of daily events and things of that nature. And this one I came across, I just couldn't ignore. You know why? Because she honestly has a point. So again, I should have said at the beginning of this is an adult podcast. So the next thing I'm going to play is kind of graphic as far as language goes. So here we go.
Hey, y'all, I just want to remind y'all, because it's been a little bit over 3 weeks, okay? It's been a little bit over 3 weeks. Trump is now ordering, as in summoning, federal government workers to go back to work without getting paid. Now, I don't want to hear y'all motherfuckers talking about, but Obama shut down the government for 17 days. Yeah, bitch. For health care. So your grandma could check her blood pressure and you bitches could go check your pussy in the gynecologist with no motherfucking problem. Now, I know a lot of y'all don't care because y'all don't work for the government or y'all probably don't even have a job, but this shit is really fucking serious, bro. This shit is crazy. Like, our country is in a hellhole right now. All for a fucking wall. Like, we really need to take this serious. I feel like we need to take some action. I don't know what type of action, bitch, because this is not what I do, but bitch, I'm scared. This is crazy, and I really feel bad for these people that gotta go to fucking work to not get motherfucking paid.
She's not wrong. She's not wrong at all. Now, I understand for a lot of people going, but that's Cardi B. I said, that is true. It is Cardi B, but at the same time, she's not wrong. I mean, she's not wrong about the government shutdown and the simple fact of the matter of people not getting paid. And the thing about it is, a lot of people, like I said, this is the reason why shutdown. So you should really be focused on why the shutdown is important, because it is affecting every other area, not just government. You're forgetting the TSA, food banks, the Food and Drug Administration, and that's just two. Now TSA is more important because it's dealing with airports, and let's be honest, you don't want lazy. You don't want I'm not going to say lazy. You don't want unmotivated federal government workers to show up at work in an area where they're supposed to be checking everybody, and they start treating that thing like a merry-go-round. But here's actually the other story about that, too, about the TSA workers, because they're now about to enter a strike.
In Los Angeles and other cities demanding an end to the shutdown. While they've been working without pay, a growing number have been calling in sick, some so they can work other jobs. Here's Chris Van Cleve.
Frustration boiled over for airport screeners protesting in Dallas this morning. The TSA administrator now confirms the spike in sick calls is due to officers who can no longer afford to work for free. This new food bank at the Tampa airport saw about 60 federal employees in its first 90 minutes. And in Orlando, people are dropping off donations, neighbors helping furloughed neighbors.
I really feel for them, and they shouldn't have to go through this.
Among the roughly 420,000 working without pay include members of the Secret Service, Border Patrol, and Amanda Gibbs' husband in the Coast Guard.
So it's been pretty shaking and somber. My husband was not in a happy mood this morning when he got dressed and, went to work, knowing that we're living on our savings account right now.
Just blocks from the White House, the line was steady outside this 2019 shutdown version of a soup kitchen for unpaid government workers and their families. Justice Department employee Chris Greer is on the job without pay.
How long can you withstand a shutdown?
I could probably go another 2 weeks or so.
And then what happens?
Then we'll be having to try to figure out how to borrow money.
World Central Kitchen, started by celebrity chef Jose Andres, usually deploys volunteer chefs after natural disasters.
This is not a disaster that we thought we would normally deploy to.
A federal judge denied a motion by the union representing air traffic controllers seeking to stop the shutdown. The controllers remain on the job without pay tonight. And the city of Atlanta is expressing concerns about the shutdown's impact on the Super Bowl, particularly when it comes to the length of TSA lines. Jeff?
All right, Chris Van Cleve for us tonight from Reagan National.
And there you have it, folks. And that's just the TSA. And a lot of people don't understand the TSA does play a very important role with airlines, along with air traffic control. That one little tower that sits up there at most airports, that's right. They're the ones that guide the airplanes in and out. They are pretty much the traffic. They're pretty much the traffic guard, I should say, authority over the airfields. So at the same time, do you really want those guys who, for lack of better words, are not getting paid to be a little bit lax on the job? I mean, I don't fly as much as I used to, but I'm just saying, I'd like for them to be taken care of because I like living. I don't want them to sit there and have that one day where they, maybe a little bit lax about the guy in my airplane, and the next thing you know, I'm going to be sitting there. We almost didn't make it. But at the same time, with the, not only this TSA, the FAA, every other government department, Coast Guard, which is interesting because this is the only, if memory serves me right, this is the only time during a U.S. presidency where any serving armed forces, because Coast Guard is considered one of those armed forces, they don't get paid. Think about that for a second. And then on top of that, you are forced, just like the IRS. The different story. The IRS, I think, recalled 36,000 of their employees from furlough to basically work for free. I don't know about you, but that's a little messed up. Where I always sit there and say best: if you're not paying me, I don't work. Simple as that. But being a federal employee, you would think you would have the same thing. It's because like I said, a lot of people been called out sick. I just told my boss flat out, am I getting paid? Well, no. Oh, no, not coming in. Not to take a line from the Lincoln lawyer, but you don't pay me, I don't go to work. But it is very scary because, like I said, this is going on the day 27 of a shutdown. We are literally almost 4 days away from a full month of the government not being fully functioning. It's a partial. They always love to lean the word. They always love to lean on the words partial shutdown. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if it's a partial shutdown, then it's still a shutdown, because there's still plenty of people out there that are not getting paid. But oh yeah, Congress is. Secret Service isn't getting paid, but the president is. I mean, hell, he just gave his cabinet a $10,000 raise. Everybody in his cabinet had a $10,000 raise. And the representatives, both representatives and senators, still getting paid. They're still getting their base salary of $174,000. But you know who aren't getting paid? The very same people that's being paid to protect them, work for them, under them, and be their associates. And you can't sit there and tell me that's not fucked up. But speaking of, like I said, not to go too deep into that, because we always keep this thing moving along. So the other thing I was wondering, that story I was looking to was Steve King. Now, Steve King is also a representative from Iowa, and he basically decided to come out with questionable terms, if you will. Basically he's a white nationalist, and it's interesting to where he actually made some comments that got him pulled from multiple committees in Congress. So it was interesting that, do Iowa vote, his home state of Iowa that he represents, do they still support him? Kind of interesting.
Let's go to King's District in Fort Dodge, Iowa. NBC News political reporter Vaughn Hilliard, also home to some of the best tacos in the country, if you didn't know that. But Vaughn, first, the topic at hand. How do the voters there feel about King today? I mean, they knew this. It's not like it hadn't been reported before.
No, they knew this. So anybody that is surprised that Steve King has made racist comments, it shouldn't be a surprise, because he has a history of them. But yet, despite all that, he has won time after time. He's represented here for more than 18 years now. Just this last November, he won his re-election again by 3.5 percentage points. And there were newspapers, including the Fort Dodge Messenger just over here to our left, that last November endorsed him again. But today they released an editorial saying, "It is now clear that the endorsement we made was a mistake. We should have pondered more carefully King's pattern of making outrageous statements." But Katie, those Republican voters that did vote for him in November, have they changed their mind? This is two of them that we just met earlier.
He must have bumped his head or something, because I wouldn't give him the time of day now. If he has to act like that, go home, go to the bathroom, and talk in there with the doors closed, because he has no place in Washington.
You see his comments, sir. He said white nationalist, white supremacist, Western civilization. How did that language become offensive?
It didn't. It wasn't offensive to me. And that. So the people that think it's offensive need to get a damn backbone and shut the hell up.
What I want to point out about Mary Grimm, that last woman that you just heard from there, Katie, was what she actually continued to say on after that, because this goes beyond Steve King, and this goes on beyond the idea of Western civilization and white supremacy, Katie. And she's not the only one that we've had conversations with in which the fear tactics have really had an impact on voters, particularly when it comes to immigration. What Mary went on to tell us was that Democrats need to get out of office because there is an invasion coming over, there are, as she said, illegals that are taking the jobs across Iowa. She was quite explicit in her language. And the thing is, she was willing to go on camera. But we've engaged in conversations like that, Katie, and I know you have as well, with voters who take the words of not only Steve King, but also the president, and really take that to the next step when it comes to these very important political issues that we're talking about.
And anyone telling them otherwise, or giving them proof or data or anything that's out there in order to push back on those beliefs, that information is cast aside and doubted.
They say that they don't know what to trust. They don't trust the news. It's fake news. But at the same time, the first man that you heard from has voted Republican his whole life, voted for Donald Trump, and he said that he's now interested in hearing what Democrats have to say. He's open to changing his mind this next November.
What is actually interesting about that? Hang on, guys. I'm trying to say this with a straight face. It's okay. So I do love conversation. I do love the simple fact of the matter is just that you hope that when someone has a difference or an opposition of opinion or something different from you, that you'll be able to sit there and go, okay, maybe if I sit down with this individual, maybe they have something that they can bring to the table that will make me feel better, or at least validate the reason why I'm sitting here. And of course, they go to a woman who voted for Steve King and they say, well, he talked about when did white nationalists, white supremacists, and this become offensive? And she goes, not offensive to me. Immediately I want to go, well, yeah, it's not offensive to you. You're white. Not only are you white, you probably are, not only is the fact of you're not a person of color, but at the same time, you probably do agree with half the stuff he said. And it's interesting where people go, well, there's racists on the Democrat side too. No argument there. But it's interesting to where once you call them out, then all of a sudden they're defensive. I'm like, this isn't an overly sensitive subject to be offended about. If you're going to stand for something, stand up behind it and be done with it. So for simple fact of the matter, Mr. King, is just that, you should resign from office because it is obvious you don't have the full views of the American people. And at the same time, you have no problem sitting there saying what's wrong with the white supremacists. That alone should disqualify you from any rank of office. But again, it's always funny to hear a wonderful supporter immediately start spouting news that they got from the president that the president got from Fox News. Always good. So another thing I did want to talk about, like I said, going into the Mueller investigation, how can I put this? So another part of the investigation, Rudy Giuliani, former New York mayor, and now is President Trump's attorney, had some interesting things to say, which I always wonder, when it comes to Trump and his followers, is there a case of amnesia?
The president's lawyer is now shifting his story, insisting Donald Trump did not collude with Russia, but leaving open the possibility his campaign did.
I never said there was no collusion between the campaign or between people in the campaign.
Yes,
I have no idea if I have not. I said the President of the United States. That directly contradicts what the president has said repeatedly about collusion between the campaign he led and the Kremlin.
There was no collusion with the campaign. There was no collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian people. There has been no collusion between the Trump campaign and Russians or Trump and Russians.
Giuliani, asked to explain his stunning comment, says he was not changing his stance, telling NBC News, "I represent the president." He added, "If you say to me tomorrow someone in the campaign colluded with the Russians, well, okay, that person did, but we didn't know about it, and I don't know of any such person." Democrats skeptical.
He appears to acknowledge collusion between the campaign and the Russians. If that's what others have taken from it, that's what I took from it. That's quite an admission by the president's own lawyer.
And do you find that disturbing?
Of course it is.
Giuliani also says the president did not tell his former lawyer to try to rig early online campaign polls. The Wall Street Journal reported Michael Cohen paid a tech firm to try to make Donald Trump look better in polling just before he announced his presidential run in 2015. Cohen today tweeted, "What I did was at the direction of and for the sole benefit of President Trump. I truly regret my blind loyalty to a man who doesn't deserve it." Hallie Jackson, NBC News, the White House.
To where you look at it, and like I said, with Giuliani, it's interesting. I never said there was. I never said there was no collusion. I never said there was no collusion. Yeah, you did. You actually said it. And this is where I say with the whole thing of keeping people. When you have them on recorded video, it's keeping them honest. Giuliani has been cited many times saying that there is no collusion. There is no collusion. Trump, multiple reels of video has turned around and said, well, there's no collusion. There's no collusion. And it's funny where now he's turned around saying, well, there might be one or two people, but that's them. That's not everybody. And I'm like, okay. That's like saying you know about that one hole in the ship that could probably take the ship down, but you don't know how it got there. But you're not going to plug it either. So again, it's like Giuliani at this point has shown that, yeah, there's a lot of smoke when it comes to there. And I think at one point we are going to find that Mueller's going to find that fire eventually. But again, for them to come around and say, when did I say that? That's why I think people should just walk around and say, oh, remember this time and this date where you said that? Here, let me play it for you. And just play it. And then when he goes, well, that's not what I meant at the time. Oh, so you're full of shit. Okay, that's nice. But it's like one of those things, like I said, keeping them honest about what they're saying, because like I said, it is very easy to turn around and dismiss it, especially when you have the BuzzFeed article out there that, you know, says that points to an allegation that seems to be argued by the people investigating, which only gives people like Giuliani and Trump more ammo, because they can turn around there and say that the media is out to get them, which is not true. The media is out to find the truth. I would hope they're out there to find the truth. So one thing I always wanted to know, because this is one of those things, like I said, I never consider myself an above average intelligence type of guy. I was always just curious. Now, the reason why I'm curious about this is like going back to the furlough employees. And furlough employees, you know, have been told to go back to work without pay, as has been reported. But to me, that's indentured servitude, because you're going to work, you're not getting paid for it. And what I did not know was that I was thinking to myself, because like I said, I'm along the lines of, hey, if I don't get paid, I don't work. Simple as that. Unfortunately for federal workers, and this is where I was discovering something, where this hopefully will get changed in the future, and I'll show you what I mean. So when I was looking up on this, where federal employees cannot strike because of their collective bargaining rights. So this one here, the Federal Service Labor Management Relations Statute, it will recognize labor unions and collective bargaining as far as employment goes. But under that very same statute, it will not allow federal workers to strike. Only because this was created by, the great communicator Ronald Reagan, which I did not know at the time, was going with the FAA, in which they were actually striking back then during his presidency, and they actually quit. So what did he do? He turned around and fired them, and then banned them from ever working for the FAA again, which I always thought was crazy, but that statute still is there to this day. And I'm thinking to myself, at one point everybody was like, oh, a government job is great. You have all these benefits and things that are that nature, and you think you'd be fine. Only to come to find out, you honestly have no bargaining rights. I mean, you have unions, yes, but as far as striking and things of that nature, that they try to prohibit you from doing. And again, this all comes back from the fact that a man just wants a wall. Even though the wall isn't effective, people have been dug under it. Immigrants take planes now, and the wall itself can easily be climbed. And it's not to keep the people on the other side from not building ladders. So, again, he only wants a wall because he can put Trump's name on it and somehow sell it to Russians. But that was just one thing. I was just curious about that furlough as far as things of that nature. So, other news that has actually come out. The Laquan McDonald story. For anybody that don't know about the Laquan McDonald story, he was the guy that was walking away from a police officer, non-threatening, although he was walking away, no gun in his hand, policeman shot him multiple times. Now, that one officer that shot him is being sentenced. The officers on the scene allegedly tried to cover up evidence that the officer shot him without defense. And here's what actually the ruling with that was today.
Victory. There is a finding of not guilty as to every count.
For the critics of the Chicago Police Department, a stunning defeat.
This verdict lets us know that the blue code of silence is alive and well in Chicago.
Officer Thomas Gaffney, former Officer Joseph Walsh, and former Detective David March, now cleared of charges they tried to cover up evidence to protect a fellow officer, Jason Van Dyke, later convicted of murder. He's seen on this chilling dashcam video shooting 17-year-old Laquan McDonald 16 times as he walked away.
16 shots! 16 shots!
Protesters were outraged because the video was released 1 year after the fatal shooting and only after a lawsuit. Prosecutors in today's case allege the police reports were written to suggest McDonald was the aggressor, an argument the judge rejected.
These three men were innocent from day one.
Tomorrow, former Officer Van Dyke is scheduled to be sentenced and faces up to 96 years in prison. Rahima Ellis, NBC News.
And with that being said, and the funny part is actually, I'm sorry, I had to get them back over to me. Apologize. So on a separate story with that same guy, he actually was sentenced. He was actually given 6 years and 9 months. So 81 months he was actually given, which I still think was a short sentence. I honestly think he should have gotten life. Life without possibility of parole, because the life he took without actually any danger to himself. Now, the 3 officers were actually released from the police department, but it doesn't keep them from not actually being rehired anywhere else. Now, what is that? And the thing about this is, this doesn't improve relationships with law enforcement and minorities, because it seems to be, aside from just 1 officer going to jail while 3 remain free, although all 4 of them were involved, it just doesn't really sit well as far as wondering how 1 person was convicted because he was caught on camera. 3 other people that wrote up these reports, which the reports are free for the community to see a year later, would turn around and sit there and suggest otherwise. But then again, however you feel about law enforcement, I know I feel a certain way about law enforcement. It doesn't improve the relationships that, really, in real honesty, it doesn't really improve anything as far as that goes. It just really leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And honestly, I mean, if anybody's ever seen my Off Limits podcast, you know how I feel about police, but we're just going to leave it there for now. So another story I want to talk about, which more recently, General Motors, where they actually have a couple of GM workers there, were suing basically because of alleged racism and bullying, which you would think that inside of a General Motors plant, this shouldn't happen. But, watching this story did make me cringe a little bit.
More than half a dozen black employees at a GM plant say they are facing racist threats and intimidation at work. Their evidence is laid out in a lawsuit with pictures of nooses, whites-only signs, and the N-word they say showed up inside the plant. While GM says it takes discrimination and intimidation seriously and is doing all it can to get rid of the problem, a state law enforcement agency ruled it isn't doing enough. CNN's Sarah Seidner has a story, and I have to warn you, okay? You will hear racial epithets and disturbing language in this story.
Every day he walked into work, Marcus Boyd prayed he'd survive his shift unscathed.
I felt like I was at war, risking my life every day.
Derek Brooks, a former Marine, worked in the same place. Both were supervisors on different shifts at the General Motors transmission plant in Toledo, Ohio. Brooks considers himself tough from his military training, but he struggled to handle what was happening at work.
How rough and tough can you be when you got 11 or 12 people who want to put a noose around your neck and hang you till you're dead?
There's a reason he brings up nooses. It's not just a figure of speech.
This is the picture of the noose that I found the night that I was at work on my shift.
According to a lawsuit now pending against GM, this is one of at least 5 nooses discovered at their workplace in separate incidents. The suit also claims there were signs that blacks were not welcome there. Whites only scrawled on a bathroom wall, along with swastikas on bathroom stalls and niggers not allowed scratched or written on bathroom walls.
This was saying, you don't belong here. This was saying, if you stay here, this is what could possibly happen to you.
In this struggling town, Brooks and Boyd didn't want to leave their 6-figure jobs. Brooks has 8 children. Boyd takes care of his mother, who was an amputee. Now, they and 7 others have sued GM for allowing an underlying atmosphere of violent racial hate and bullying.
When did you notice overt racism?
Well, when an employee that was under me, he told me that back in the day, a person like me would have been buried with a shovel.
He said what to you?
That was a death threat, and I was told to push that to the side.
Boyd says he reported the incident.
He admitted to it, and I was pulled to the side and said, if you want to build relationships here, you just let things go, he'll be all right.
But he says the threats got worse.
Were you afraid for your life?
Definitely. That's why I left.
When the noose appeared in March of 2017, Derek Brooks says he reported it to upper management. He was sure he was the intended target, but says he was told to investigate by questioning his employees.
It felt like a slap in the face. It did, but I had to be professional.
Brooks and other black employees also noticed being called Dan.
I thought they just mispronounced my name for Derek. Then later I find out that Dan was an acronym for dumbass nigga.
General Motors sent us a statement insisting discrimination and harassment are not acceptable and in stark contrast to how they expect people to show up at work. We treat any reported incident with sensitivity and urgency and are committed to providing an environment that is safe, open, and inclusive. And that every day, everyone at General Motors is expected to uphold the values that are an integral part of its culture. But according to more than half dozen current and former black employees, the problem is the culture. They say inside this plant, racism and harassment are the norm, not the exception.
It is a culture.
It's a culture. Yeah. You have to, it's from the top down and the bottom up.
One employee filed a police report. Others filed complaints with the Ohio Civil Rights Commission prior to filing suit.
The ultimate decision that was made is that GM did allow a racially hostile environment.
They allege they investigated quickly and have done remedial things to take care of the problem.
The commission disagrees with that position. GM did not do very much at all, or what they did do was not effective.
GM says that they held mandatory meetings and even closed the plant for a day for training and to address the issue with every shift. The Civil Rights Commission report noted a former union president's testimony that during one of those meetings, a white supervisor said too big of a deal was being made of the nooses. After all, there was never a black person who was lynched that didn't deserve it. The lawsuit alleges that supervisor was never disciplined.
General Motors is supposed to stand for something, right? That's the great American company. Well, what are you doing about this?
A GM representative that we spoke to says that they have not identified those who put up the nooses, and therefore no one has been fired for those incidents. They said, however, that some people have been dismissed in that Toledo plant during what it's calling its extensive anti-discrimination and anti-harassment work, and that work continues today. But Don, guess what else continues? Yeah. The racist threats. Just today, we received a picture from inside of the plant sent to an attorney that mentions hanging people. There have been other threats against those who have spoken out, black workers there, threats directed directly at them, and they are now in fear and would not go on camera because they were in fear for speaking out again in case more threats came their way as they're going through this process, Don.
You told us, Sarah, what GM said. What about the union?
So we did speak to a UAW representative, and he said, look, he'd been there for 34 years. There could be some, what he said, bad actors that work there, but he didn't believe that there was widespread intentional racism. Now, he said something very interesting. He says, do I believe that people are a little too sensitive in this day and age? Yes, but you can't say the same things you used to say 20 years ago that you can say now. That is the problem that these workers are talking about, being called sensitive when they're facing these really extreme racial epithets, really extreme behavior, and they're being told to suck it up and get along.
Honest, at that point, I wouldn't be working at GM anymore. I mean, props to those guys for, standing up and, standing up for what they believe in and going from there. Had that been me, I like to consider myself a very peaceful person, a very easygoing person. Water off the back, I'm a cool cat. Don't get me wrong. The moment I see a noose hanging in the place where I work at, I'm on full tilt. I'm going to go, I'm the kind of cat that will probably take that noose down, walk around and say, which one of y'all want to play Hang the Negro? Because in my mind, I'd be like, I want to know which one of y'all, so I want to know the person that put it up. Because if you put something up like that in a workplace, yeah, it's a threat. When you put up there whites only or niggers not allowed or anything of that nature, yeah, it's a threat. So I'm going to act accordingly and be like, you know what? Which one of y'all want to try? I'll be the guy that literally gets fired because I decide to go ahead and fight. Because in my mind, I'll be like, oh no, you're not going to threaten me and then just, I'm supposed to just, let's just talk. No. What'd you say, Derek? That's Northwest Ohio for you. And it's just like, in GM, which is not doing shit, they're going the corporate route. Well, this, we don't endorse a workplace of bullying and harassment and overall racist epithets. But yet, here they are. multiple people are coming forward and saying, yes, there's always been that culture there. And like I said, had that been me, I'm pretty sure I would have been on the news. Simple fact of the matter is, yeah, they put nooses up, and I want to know which one of these motherfuckers wants to do it. And if they bold enough to do it, you bold enough to put one up, you bold enough to get fucked up. But it's one of those things to where I would sit there and say, it amazes me still that, when you can sit there and put a noose up, and you can sit there and make those comments and things, and are told that that is the way things are, and that you literally have no power. This is what leads to violence. And this is actually, it was funny where they talked about, well, some people have been dismissed. Really? Who? Who's been dismissed? Certainly not the people that actually caused the situation, because the situation is still ongoing, so that can't be true. So again, it's those things where it's just, how in the world can we also sit there and say as a group, as a collective group, that yes, these things are actually being taken care of, but at the same time, the culture still remains. And like I said, it's culture. And like I said, I was telling those workers at GM that are suing, I hope you get your money, because honestly, there's another story I was going to put out about a former employee that sued Hilton, who got $21 million because they forced her to work on Sundays, and in her religion, she doesn't work on Sundays, and they forced her to work on her religion. That woman is $21 million richer now. So I will say, those GM workers who are suing, get your money, and at the same time, don't walk back into a situation where your life is threatened. I'll be honest with you. I would love to beat up a racist. I would love to give them back the one thing they're afraid of. But actually, in this day and age, you don't know what could happen. Though you don't know what could happen. You don't know if there's more than one of them. You don't know if either of them are carrying weapons. It's smarter. It's always smarter to use your head first before you use your fist. Because I know there were many times I wanted to sit there during that report, and I just wanted to go, I would love to just take that noose down and go around and be asking who wants to play Hanging Negro. But that's not the smart thing to do. The smart thing to do is always think ahead, because thinking with this keeps you alive better than going with these sometimes. Well, I won't say sometimes, most of the time. But again, those black GM workers, be safe. Don't go in that plant. I'm sorry. I hope they're actually walking out, because it just makes no sense to stay there when your life is in danger like that. Like I said, the ping will definitely will still follow with that story, just to see what else is being said. But another story I was going to point out, speaking of just accepting things. You guys remember that newscaster I posted last week, that had the little flub about, saying Martin Luther Coon, and he was fired for it. I don't know what's going on, but here's another one.
Please know I have total respect for Dr. King, what he meant and continues to mean to our country. This was not intentional in any way, and I sincerely apologize.
We believe strongly in holding our reporters and anchors to the highest standard. We're proud of our dedicated newsroom professionals and expect and require that each respects and understands that their behavior reflects directly on the station for which they work in the community we serve.
How hard is it to get Coon and King mixed up? Seriously, I just want to... Okay, I understand. I understand anchormen, forecasters, and whatnot all look at a teleprompter because they pretty much have to look and read and look at the camera. Just like I'm doing, except I don't have a teleprompter. Everything I'm speaking from is correctly off the dome. So, and I'm more of a, and I love language, don't get me wrong. I'm a very wordy person because I always try to find words that, don't really get used a lot and just try to incorporate them in speech. Because like I said, the language that we have, along with other languages out there, is beautiful. And I love actually looking into that and love investigating and find out words like perturbed. Because let's be honest, you can say perturbed in a sentence and not too many people will know that you're pissed. But again, how is it that you can say Martin Luther King, but then you go coon, King Coon, King Coon, King Coon? I don't see how, phonetically speaking, it's almost impossible to go Martin Luther King or Coon unless you see Kuhn or Kung, but somehow you went to Coon. How? I'm like, because even if you're sitting there watching it, if you're sitting there reading it, for some odd reason going Martin Luther King seems to roll off the tongue for me. I can read on a teleprompter. Oh, it's Martin Luther King Day, folks. Let's celebrate this remarkable man who has made an impact in the civil rights movement. But unfortunately, you get guys that there and go, okay, guys, here's your neck of the woods, and you can see over here about Martin Luther King. But here's the thing. I used to sit there and say flubs can happen. Flubs can happen. But here is a thing that just annoys me so. You can't sit there and you know the impact of the word. If you know the impact of the word, you know the significance of the word. Wouldn't that mean that you'll try to avoid that if possible? Even if you're on a teleprompter, you can sit there and just go, well, Martin Luther King. I mean, if you gotta do that, don't be on television. Because apparently you have to stop yourself from saying coon. The simple fact of the matter is this is now the second Caucasian male on a news channel that has said coon. Let me be clear. Here's how I know where it's not just people go, well, I think people are just making too big a word out of it. It's really too easy to get lost in words when you're working in such a high profile. He's not the fucking president. You can sit there and if you have to really think about that. If you have to say words, because you only say words that are familiar to you, or you'll use words that you're comfortable with. So if you use words like, oh, I don't know, coon a lot, if you say coon and use that as an accident, that means that you probably said coon somewhere else in life and you said it repeatedly. Why? Because just like you have muscle memory for your arms, your hands, your legs, body positions, things of that nature, your tongue and your mental memory works the same way. So you can't sit there and tell me that this is the second guy who accidentally said coon. It is very hard to make that argument. You don't sit there and say coon unless you said it before. And you say coon because it feels comfortable. Just like y'all say nigger. Y'all say nigger comfortably. But you'll blame it us and but y'all say it too. Yes, because we say nigga. Well, some of us. I don't say nigga. But it's the interesting thing where, people are, well, I didn't mean to say it, but yet you seem so comfortable with it. I'm just saying. It's like, prove me wrong about that fact. But I see those two doing a lot of PR in their future to get a job somewhere else. When you say, Derek, man, I wish I could get my hands on a racist. We need to come up with a meme. White people the most apologizing. White people be the most apologizing people who never really mean it. Yeah, you got a point there. They do be you're right. I mean, you can go down the road and actually go with all of those. There's always one that just, it's always one that just seems to apologize. And speaking of apologizing, there was actually another story, because let's say, Congress has really just been on a roll this week. So there's not video on this, but apparently Representative Jason Smith was decided to give a very interesting comment to Representative Tony Cardenas, where he was as the representative was speaking, he decided to sit there and tell the representative to go back to Puerto Rico. Now, it's always interesting to see where, a white man's going to tell somebody, as people of color, we're always used to people telling us, go back to Africa, or, back to Mexico, or whatever it is. And initially, when that comment was said, nobody knew who the actual person was. The weird part is I was trying to find video on it to see if I could actually, point it out, but unfortunately it's not available, I guess, at all. And it was interesting, as the person was talking, of course, this representative had sat there and said, go back to Puerto Rico and stop the session completely. Because everybody's trying to figure out who said it. So now this coward comes forward and wants to sit there and issue an apology. And of course, they have to sit there and say, well, I accept his apology, things of that nature, and I look forward to having a conversation with him. No. If a person's going to sit there and the first thing they sit there and do is turn around and say something and then immediately apologize afterwards, they didn't mean it. It's bullshit. It's simple fact of the matter is you told a person that you believe of Puerto Rican descent to go back to a country you believe they came from. And it's not, I understand it's not nothing new, but at the same time, it's not surprising. And that's why I'm like, and these people, I don't have sympathy for them. I don't have sympathy for them when your initial comment is tell them to go back to a place of origin where you believe they're from, because you're basing it off whatever prejudice you have, and you're basing it off whatever prejudice you have, and that itself is fucked up. So again, it's one of those situations to where how in the world are these people allowed to be in office? And I just think to myself, it's only because of the people who vote them in. And the people who vote them in share their views, and shouldn't be no different as far as, that being said. But time will tell if he actually is removed from office. Aside from that, there was another one. There was actually another story that came out about a veteran who was detained by ICE, because as you can tell, ICE has been empowered to be the modern day Gestapo and in looking for illegal immigrants and possibly deporting them. The problem is they actually came across one who was not only a former Marine who actually served in Afghanistan, but is actually a legal citizen. And this is what his mom had to say about that.
When I heard that my son was in immigration's hand, I was like, nothing, immigration, nothing they gotta do with my son, nothing. Oh, well, why immigration? Why my son with immigration? Yeah, go find out. And they give me the address. And that's when I went outside, when I saw my son in a van, immigration van, I was like, I think they just joking. That's not right, what they did to my son. They throw him like nothing. So they don't care what he did for his country. So that makes me mad. They don't, he need respect.
Completely right. She's completely right. It's amazing that her son did serve. Her son did serve, was a decorated Marine, was honorably discharged, and was living legally in the U.S. because he is a legal citizen, and ICE detained him and actually kept him for a while until they realized, oh crap, he's an American. And again, this is where another part of where Baby Orange's Gestapo initiative is actually causing more harm than good, because the simple fact of the matter is just that if you're looking for illegal immigrants, what are they actually looking for aside from optical aspects, which again shouldn't be done, but yet we're seeing more and more stories like this pop up about American citizens who are being treated like illegal immigrants. And honestly, even illegal immigrants shouldn't be treated like vermin, which is basically what they're doing. So I feel for the mother, because her son was like, I signed up to protect this country, and this country is pretty much trying to get rid of me in so many ways and forms. But like I said, it's always funny where the Department of Homeland Security and and ICE are always sitting there saying, well, we can only do so much. Okay, yeah, we can only do so much. You guys have already been good at deporting illegal immigrants, separating kids, putting them in ICE detention centers, and then creating camps because you will keep the child, but you'll deport the parents. And they're still honestly doing it. Just like in the same case, Flint, Michigan still doesn't have clean water. But that's what I'm saying. But that's what I'm saying, just along the lines of where it just gets good and terrible. But also to keep going forward. So anybody remember Rand Paul? I remember Rand Paul because unfortunately I can't not go through Kentucky without seeing at least one or two signs about him. Well, anyway, he's actually going to Canada for surgery. For I think it was hernia surgery. Now, a lot of people are sitting there saying, because this was the person who was an outspoken member against Obamacare, against the ACA law, against the mandatory mandate to where everybody needs to be covered, to pretty much everything that was put out there, healthcare law-wise, he was against. Keep in mind, he voted. He was one of the very few. Now, when it came down to Obamacare, he did vote yes because he only voted yes to save his seat, as far as him being in the Senate. But the other times he voted no. And you're right, Derek. He did get beat up. I'm like, that's gotta been a little over a couple of years since he's been beat up. But for someone who is such a prominent, outspoken critic of Obamacare, he's actually going to Canada to basically get surgery. And here's what and then of course, they decided to interview Rand Paul to basically give him his chance to speak.
To respond to some of the criticism you've received from those who say, wait a second, Senator Paul's going to Canada to receive surgery on his hernia from the incident back in late 2017. Does your personal health decision have any relation whatsoever to your views on healthcare here in the United States, insurance, I should say?
I've had a tough year. I've been through a lot of physical problems. I had 6 ribs broken, 3 of them displaced, rubbing on each other for months. I went through horrendous pain. I had pneumonia twice. I had fluid buildup around my lungs. Now I've got other problems I have to deal with. So it's been a hard year, all because of, the violence of somebody. And I think the one thing is we should send a message to people that we shouldn't tolerate this kind of violence and that there has to be a punishment. If you choose to attack your neighbor, you choose to attack somebody in your town, like this with this malicious violence, there has to be a punishment. Now, with regard to my choices on where I go for surgery, I looked for, a place that did primarily that type of surgery, a place that actually accepts Americans who pay cash. It's a private hospital. So the funny thing is that people had an agenda that wanted to attack me, said, oh, you're going to choose socialized medicine. No, I'm actually choosing capitalistic medicine because they only take cash from foreigners. And so it's actually a reasonable price, too. So not only are they a world-renowned center, their price is about 1/2 to 1/3 of what your insurance would pay. So in some ways, insurance overpays for things in our country, but since this place takes primarily cash from foreigners and from people who don't have insurance, the price has actually been bid down. We have some centers like this. Oklahoma has a center like this, but doesn't specialize in the surgery that I need. But I chose it because they were good at it, and actually the price is right.
Sir, anything else you'd like to add on that?
No, thanks.
I'd like to give you...
All right, so let's address some bullshit comments on this. And I'm going to go ahead and call bullshit. Number one, you didn't pick Canada because of its outstanding practice for hernia surgery. You picked it because, as you know, Canada doesn't have a fucked up system like we do, and it doesn't have debating hospitals that actually have to have higher costs. Because it's kind of funny where you sit there and says, well, I'm going over here because I can pay with cash and they're great at what they do, and the cost up there is about 1/3 of what we'll be paying down here. Time out. So the very same things that you voted against here in the U.S., you're enjoying in Canada. Am I the only one that didn't catch? Am I the only one when he sat there and said, I was like, wait a minute. How in the world could you be against it in your own country, but you'll go enjoy the same thing you voted against in another country? And he keeps on talking about, well, I'm paying for it out of pocket. Well, of course you can. You've had endorsements. There's no such thing as a broke politician, number one. There's no such thing as a broke politician. So we know you have money. We also know that you have the ability. And that's the one thing that a lot of those who are in these PACs and whatnot, who get endorsements from Big Pharma and Big Oil, will never understand, is because they're living in a world that's full of ability and means for them. Ability and means, which means that they have the means to get whatever they need, and they have the ability to get there. So again, I'm not knocking him as far as him going to wherever he wants to go. As a human being, if you have the money and means to go anywhere for the best care, you should. The problem I have with Rand Paul is how hypocritical of you to go through the very same door that you closed here. Because the same things that you go into Canada for, you probably can come here. You know, if you guys actually worked out this healthcare system to where hospitals are not charging a goddamn arm and a leg just for a visit, so many people wouldn't be mulling over the decision to go to an emergency room or just tough it out and hopefully don't die. It's just the thing about this where I always sit there and say it is amazing to me how guys like him who voted against healthcare, who didn't actually bring up alternatives, mind you, and then will go to a place where the healthcare system works is because the country actually went to a single payer system, like much of the world has done. The U.S. and maybe 4 other countries are the only ones that don't have a single payer system. And the thing about it is, in those single payer systems, healthcare companies don't really thrive that well. That's why all these healthcare companies are lobbying Congress not to go into that. Because if we did, healthcare is no longer a for-profit business, and a lot of these companies will either merge or lower their prices. And at the same time, if we actually opened up the drug markets to other countries, aside from just 2, that itself would make drug prices come down. Because now Americans have different choices to go for their medicine, for their health care, and things of that nature. But people like Rand Paul, who unfortunately got beat up almost 2 years ago, is now going in for surgery because he has the means to do it. And that, to me, is sickening. And when you say, Derek, damn, that guy put it on him. Once he started talking, you can hear the BS. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, once he started talking, you can hear the BS. Which I think it's funny that the guy beat you up 2 years ago, and you're going for surgery now. Ruth Bader Ginsburg got lung cancer surgery, and she's back on the job in less than 3 days. You're gonna sit there and tell me a 70-year-old woman is tougher than you? I'm just saying. Ruth Bader Ginsburg fell, had a few broken ribs, was in the office the next day. Then she goes into surgery to remove cancerous material from her body that may be lung cancer. And 4 days later, she's back in the office. You got beat up 2 years ago. How in the world are you still, well, I have a number of issues. No, it sounds like someone else may have gotten to you, because if dude beat you up almost 2 years ago and you're still feeling it, he must have whooped your ass. That's all I'm saying. But again, it's one of those things where I always see individuals like Rand Paul who will always sit there and say one thing and do another. He's about as flaky as Jeff Flake. So the last thing of the other news bit I have is, well, guys, for a lot of us that follow football, we know Championship Sunday's coming up between the AFC and the NFC, and we know in February, I'm trying to enjoy this. I'm trying to enjoy this fall back because I know. Separate note: I hate daylight savings time. I hate the simple fact of the matter is that we have to wind our clocks forward for no freaking reason, only for us to lose an hour of sleep. Why can't we just be fall back all year? That's just me, but that's a different rant. But anyway, as we're about to get into February, within the new year, you know what that means? The last hurrah, the Super Bowl's coming up. And there's been quite the talk about the Super Bowl, especially the halftime show. And of course, and on a separate note, we used to get so excited about the commercials. The commercials that companies pay $1 to $1.2 million for 30 seconds of airtime. We used to get so excited about that. But anyway, so here's some interesting about the halftime show, which some people may or may not know.
Today, this halftime show wasn't easy to pull together.
Right, good morning. So headlining the Super Bowl was thought to be a huge honor, but it has been a tough spot to fill. Many artists distancing themselves from the big show in support of Colin Kaepernick, and other players taking a knee to protest racial injustice. It's official. This year's Super Bowl halftime show has finally found a headliner, Maroon 5. Maroon 5 had been the unofficial pick for months, but reportedly struggled to find guest performers, partly due to backlash over the NFL's handling of Colin Kaepernick and players' right to protest. Rihanna reportedly turned down the offer to perform, deciding to stand in solidarity with the former 49ers quarterback turned free agent. Comedian Amy Schumer announced she wouldn't appear in any Super Bowl ads this year.
My fellow Americans, they say we're a nation divided.
And in October, even calling out Maroon 5 in an Instagram post saying, "I think it would be cool if Maroon 5 backed out of Super Bowl. Stand up for your brothers and sisters of color." Overnight, NFL posting this promo on Instagram announcing rappers Travis Scott and Big Boy will join Adam Levine and company on stage. And even with those acts announced, the NAACP is asking those performers to reconsider participating. Travis Scott reportedly only agreed to participate if the NFL agreed to donate to a social justice fighting. Yes, Dream Corps. So it seems like he found kind of a happy medium there.
Yeah. All right, Janae. Thanks so much.
Interesting about that is that, all right, so of course, for all those, if you haven't been under a rock or you just not been paying attention to sports, they were talking about Colin Kaepernick as he was the one that did start to take a knee, which was to protest against social injustices and policing and police brutality. It was never about the flag, which a lot of people tried to make that out about because, you know, as a lot of people never understood that when you don't really have to stand up for the national anthem. You don't. You don't really have to. The national anthem is honestly not a forced signature, which was a lot of people started doing, like myself, whenever the national anthem was actually announced or was asked to stand up. I either sit down or I take a knee. Because I stopped saying that. It's like, it's one of those things where I just sit there and go, you know, you don't have to take something because you were told. I mean, I stopped saying the Pledge of Allegiance in 4th grade because I started realizing, why do we say this? Why are we pledging allegiance to a flag? And it feels too much of a cult. And that was me in 4th grade. I actually knew what a cult was. And I thought to myself, this is a cult. We just stand up, turn to the right, and salute a flag? I kind of feel like I should be just hypnotized by this. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But Kaepernick actually went on this protest, and he, of course, was, and still, I still believe he was blackballed by the NFL because the NFL went out of their way to find the crappiest quarterbacks. Keep in mind, Cap would always go back to the NFL, you know, but he would go back on his own terms. So it's the thing where I would sit there and I'm saying, you know, when Cap did leave, and of course the NFL still went on, and now they get to the Super Bowl to where, of course, they found Maroon 5, nothing wrong with Maroon 5, that wants to play. And again, and it's always funny when the NFL has to make sure that they've covered their ethnic diversity by making sure that Travis Scott and Big Boy are a part of it. So, and a lot of people were like, "Wait, really? Big Boy? Travis Scott? I mean, Big Boy from Outkast is about to," and I look at this and I go, I understand from both sides. I mean, I understand, like I said, I understand with Cap was blackballed by the NFL. This is true. And that I wished that the black players would have followed him because the NFL is 70% black. Let's just be honest. In the NBA, we're 85% of the NBA, we're 70% of the NFL, and I think we're maybe about 20% of the MLB. We do know within two sports, if all the black people left, those sports would crumble because you would not be able to find enough players fast enough to support that. That's why I was saying with the NFL, if all the black players decide to stand out and not play a game or a week or not play it all for the rest of the season, that would cripple the NFL. Now I understand that. I also understand from the other side of it too, because, you know, say for instance, you're one of those kids that just signed an NFL contract. You're one of those kids that, let's just say, all your life, all you had was cup of noodle, ramen, maybe a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You know, you were frugal. You were frugal because of the struggle. Now you sign this brand new $1 million, $5 million, $20 million, whatever contract, and the signing bonus, because the bonus is what the immediate money. And let's just say that bonus is, let's say that bonus is $700,000 or $800,000. Let's even say it's even $5 or $10 million. All of a sudden, your situation changes. Your financial situation is for the better. Matter of fact, off $20 million alone, you're set. You're set to do whatever you want to do for the rest of your life. You can actually have fun. And then you see something like this go on, and now you wonder whether or not that you want to join this man in solidarity. But joining this man in solidarity means that you now have to give up the one thing that has made your financial future look better for you. And I get that, because one NFL player who didn't give his name pretty much sat there and said that was his struggle, because he came from poverty and he's better off now. But if he joins someone else in their struggle, then he's afraid that his livelihood will be taken away from him. And he said that he goes, I'm not the only guy out there, because we all support him, but we all have families. And that I get that. Now, for me, I would be like, if you don't stand for something, you're going to get run over. And if if you tell people what your price is, then don't be surprised when they give you exactly what you're asking for. So in my mind, for me, I stick with Cap, just because the fact of the matter is, until things have changed in the NFL, that's fine. Now, what does that do with the halftime show? They're entertainers, folks. I mean, half these people that go to the halftime Super Bowl, they're entertainers. I mean, if Maroon 5 wants to play, they shouldn't get heckled for that. If Big Boy and Travis Scott want to perform, I believe they should get heckled for that. Because again, they're entertainers. Entertainers are much like lawyers in some points. You cannot have a personal moral vacuum. You don't believe me? Beyonce performed for how many Jewish families in the past year? Even those Jewish families had to pony up a Brinks truck armored full of money. Nobody's not questioning Beyonce why she sung for Jewish kids. Nobody's not questioning half of what these artists do that perform at these birthday parties, bar mitzvahs, company outings and whatnot, and even go overseas like places like Dubai and every place else, because they will pay. Not to sit there and downplay their moral compass, but just like lawyers, you have to defend everybody, because until it is ruled everybody is innocent until proven guilty. So again, I can't knock Travis Scott. I can't knock Big Boy, because honestly, they're doing the job. I think who you really should be like. And people always sit there and say, "Well, if you play for the NFL, you support them." Not necessarily true. Big Boy can sit there and say, "Look, a job's a job, but I still stand with Cap." For all I know, Big Boy might come out there with a Kaepernick jersey on just to piss off the NFL, for all I know. But it's still possible. At the same time, it's where a lot of people always, like I said before, and I'll say this again for all those that don't know, it's not about the flag, about what Cap's doing. Cap is talking about social injustices, police brutality, racial inequality, wage income cap issues, and a list of other things. But it's never been about a flag, and it's never been about the national anthem, which you only say one verse of it, by the way. So if you really want to be honest, if you go through the entire Star Spangled Banner, you might not be saying that anymore after you read it. Just saying, you got Google, look it up. There's a verse in there that'll just make black people go, "We've been saying this for how long? You've been saying one verse. You didn't get to verse 2. So again, it's one of those things where I will sit there and be like, it's not that you shouldn't harp on entertainers. I mean, if anything, go up to the NFL. Don't buy tickets, don't buy apparel, stop going to games. And I would hope that all the black players would get the coalition to all not play or all leave, or just sit out a season. Now I understand for that. Now, like I said, speaking for that one guy's set of opinion, I get exactly where it's coming from. Once you've had a taste of the good life, you don't want to give it up, especially if it changes your outlook, especially on life. Because be honest with you, the power of money does open doors, and does bring opportunities. So let's just be clear about that. As what did Drake say? The power of money ain't a joke. But speaking of money, and like I said, we're getting to this other part. I like to call it because, like I said, I know we're getting to the part of the feel good moments. Because I know here on How the Frack We Got Here, we do cover a lot of information that is very dark, sometimes not very optimistic. But again, we want to go to the places that not to be news media people go and will say the things that need to be said. But we do always want to leave things on a positive note because I'm all about positivity and trying to move things forward and going in the outlook direction. That being said, there was, like I said, for anybody that's seen my Alpha this podcast, I do harp a lot about religion in churches, but I do have to point out this one church that actually did this, where they actually handed out money, almost really $16,500 to a lot of furloughed federal workers. Now, say what you want about churches, because I know I do all the time, but this church actually did good work to where they actually took care of their community, to where they gave out that kind of money, and I think like $2,500 in donations. They gave out gift cards, they gave out food, and the thing about this, all this was going down was this was all done inside 30 minutes, according to the pastor. And that to me is cool. That to me, like I said, not to get into religion too much, but if you are followers of a certain religion where it says help one another, that's a prime example. And I know a lot of people are going to go, well, that pastor John Gray did the same thing with Relentless Church. Yeah, you shouldn't really use him as an example right now. He's kind of having mental issues. But yeah, it's also a good thing with that. And then the other story I have, which is always funny because this was actually a lottery. And of course, not the lottery here. This is the lottery in Sydney, where the woman basically had almost the same reaction as we would have to if we ever won the jackpot.
Australia's biggest ever individual lotto winner, scooping the entire Powerball Division 1 pool last night. She was shocked when she got the call, thinking she'd only won $107,000, before getting a most welcome surprise.
It was an afterthought. A woman went online to play 12 games of Powerball, clicking on random numbers. At 10 p.m, she received the call telling her she'd won $107 million.
She was initially in absolute disbelief. She was really struggling to comprehend the size of her prize and that it had landed in her hands.
It's the biggest individual lotto win in Australian history, beating a Harvey Bay couple who won $70 million in 2016. Last year was extraordinarily lucky. A WA couple won $50 million and a Cairns mum won $40 million. Three winners from Queensland, Sydney and WA split a $50 million jackpot, and two winners from Melbourne and Sydney shared $40 million. Australians spend about $20 billion a year playing lotto. Did you win the Powerball last night?
No. I won $15.
What would you do?
Buy my nana farm.
The nurse who won last night spent $14.50 on her ticket. She certainly beat the odds of 1 in 134 million to win the jackpot. Financial experts say the best way to keep family and friends on side and to avoid the scammers is to put almost all the money into a 12-month term deposit. That way it's locked up for a year whilst earning about $3 million in interest.
When people find out, that changes your relationships with a lot of people. So having it locked up means you can just say, sorry, it's locked up, there's nothing I can do at the moment.
The winner says she's staying in a day job, may buy a caravan and will help family and her favourite charity. Brian Seymour, 7 News.
So let's kind of be honest on this. And I said, that we all dream of winning the lottery. And I like sharing stories like that just because, if you're below the 750K line as far as income goes, it is always cool to see people who really just get money. I mean, in so many words. In her case, she sat there and said she's still going to continue working. And when she said that, I was like, I could say that, but let me be honest, if I ever did win the lottery, especially the U.S. lottery, this is becoming my full-time job. Believe that. I will sit here and do podcasts. Woo! Yeah, that'd be me. That would actually be me. My initial idea of the lottery is to, and I'm be honest with you, I will tell this story. Like in my case, and this is petty. I will say this at first. I have student loans. Of course, pretty much almost everybody does if you didn't get a scholarship. If I turned around and I won the lottery, I would literally go to my bank, get the entire amount of what I owe in student loans in pennies, and I would make sure to go get some 5-gallon water drums. This has been done before, I know, but it's just so, I mean, here's the thing I would do. I would drive that freaking truckload of pennies to literally to my student loan, bank, to the company I was for student loans, go straight up to the counter and just say, okay, I have it all here. Sir, do you know how long it's going to take us to count that? Oh, go ahead, I got all day. Now, a lot of people be sitting there saying, Will, that's kind of messed up. You shouldn't do that to people who are just now working there because they got to work too. Hell, I just help them get overtime. But then again, that would just be me because like I said before, money, the power of money does change aspects on life. I know I talked about that with the NFL players as far as changing their aspects. I get it completely. But what I'm saying is just that, when you think about the lottery, that does give us the ability to daydream, to things to be better. Because let's be honest, who couldn't use $20 million? I love when people sit there and say, well, I'm not going to play the Powerball till it gets over. I'm not going to play the Powerball. I'm not going to play Mega Millions, or I'm not going to play, XYZ, any lottery game out there. I'm not going to play it unless it's over this set amount. So $20 million wouldn't save your life? $20 million wouldn't change your life? If I had $20 million, trust me, at the end of the year, I'd still have $19,900,000 because I know I'm going to pay for some things. I know I'm going to make sure my immediate family is taken care of. Because, like they said, it's amazing how many people want to call you brother. How many people want to call you brother when your money's great. So you got to be careful about that. But again, everybody's got their set plans as far as what they do when they win the lottery. I understand from the economic side of things that it's nearly impossible to win the lottery. You have about as much chance of getting hit by a bus or struck by lightning than you do win the Powerball. I understand that. But again, as long as don't get too crazy with it, like folks that are buying $400, $500 worth of tickets, those are the people that shouldn't be playing lottery. That's either you got money, or you got a gambling problem, one of the two. But it's always nice to dream, and sometimes that dream becomes reality. You should enjoy it. Now, I'm not going to knock that woman because if she decided that she still wants to work, then great. She's going to be working with a lot more less stress because anytime they get on her nerves, she can just turn around and walk right out. I just go ahead and, like I said, if I won the lottery, welcome to my new job. I would be honest. Welcome to my new job about my podcast. I would be about my podcast at that point if I won. But anyway, guys, just some good news. Like I said, it's always nice to talk about it. Always nice to dream. But I'm always saying, as long as you stick to what you're going to, as long as you work hard, eventually you'll achieve your dream. But that's gonna be it for this podcast. Thank you guys for all watching. Thank you. Ooh, wow, we had a lot of people. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Angie. Ooh, wow. Let's just say for all those who are watching, really thank you because, y'all, wow. Okay, cool. I'm not going to knock that. But thank you guys for all watching. Like I said, this is not my only podcast here on Saturdays. Later on this evening, I will have my Off Limits podcast. Now, the Off Limits podcast is exactly how it sounds like. It is definitely not for the faint of heart because we do go to areas that most people wouldn't go to, but we do try to have logical conversations and try to actually share knowledge. But that's going to be a little bit later today, usually from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., a little bit later today because this jungle has to get fixed. Aside from that, guys, I'm not the only guy with podcasts later today. My other friend, Thomas Reed, will actually have a To Be Determined podcast coming up. To Be Determined is a fitness podcast where he goes over things that he can do, things you want to avoid, gym first-timers, and things of that nature along with his personal testimony. Really good guy who's actually been in fitness for almost 8 years. If I could show you the pictures that he started out with and where he's to now, you wouldn't believe it's the same guy. But again, To Be Determined podcast, which will actually be up here later today. My other two compadres, Stephen Weatherspoon on Facebook, has several podcasts of his own. He has the I Get That Reference VST, which is a short podcast, which is back over movies, games, and other news that you might want to be aware of. Totally interactive show. He actually has Rhythmness, where you can reminisce over the rhythm, where he actually goes over music, certain music albums that have come out, and goes to a 4-tier system. If you want to know what the 4-tier system is, just tune in to Rhythmness to find out. He also has Random as Fuck with Uncle VZ, which is also a 30-minute podcast, early morning, where he just finds the interestingly occult, if you could put it that way. Just videos, things of that nature, to where it'll make you go make you go wow, or make you cry. At least one of the three. And also my other buddy Trace Brown on Facebook, also has The Bump Down, which is also a musical podcast where he goes over what's hot on the charts and the mainstream, what's on the underground, news and views, and also if you're an upcoming artist or just curious about the recording industry, he does have a lot of background knowledge that most people will find beneficial. I know I do, because I don't know spit about the recording industry, and I love to hear his take on things. He also has The Smoke of Truth, which also is a very in-your-face, unorthodox, blunt podcast where he talks over several different subjects. But like I said, that podcast is not for the faint of heart. If you're wanting to learn, or if you're wanting just to be able to speak to a person and be able to do it with no bounds and no limits, much like off limits, but you'll be able to do that also with The Smoke of Truth as well. All these podcasts can be found at I Get That Reference Facebook group. So if you look at the Facebook group I Get That Reference, it is a group for all. The only thing we do ask that you participate, which means that you're liking, you're sharing, you're posting comments, being social. You're on Facebook for a reason, aside from not being a creeper. But aside from that, we also have YouTube pages as well. So if you look up Y'all's podcast, How the Frack We Got Here, The Bump Down, and I Get That Reference, they all have YouTube pages to where you'll be able to see almost every podcast we've ever done in video. And also if you go on Google Play and iTunes and you look up I Get That Reference, The Bump Down there, you'll be able to get audio-only podcasts of the shows. I myself will eventually be joining that once all the legal work's out of the way. But beyond that, that's all I have. Beyond that, that's really all I have for the shameless plugging. The one thing I do want to say on How the Frack We Got Here, the main goal of this podcast is to stay informed. Staying informed means that you are going in and you're actually looking for the truth. You're not accepting things at face value. You're going to see, where it takes you as far as making your own conclusions, and hopefully whatever you find, you're presenting to others, so hopefully they'll follow and do the same thing, because an informed community leads to an informed society, which leads to better choices and better decisions, because an uninformed community got us Trump. So, for that being said, guys, thank you all for watching the How We Frack We Got Here today, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I know for a lot of us, they're going to probably be hitting some winter storms, so be safe, be careful, be cool, stay informed, and stay woke. Peace.